You've wanted it, you've begged for it, and it's finally here, just under the wire. It's our annual summer episode. Tonight we'll be discussing the summer movie releases of 1994. And as usual, I'm Jamie. I'm here with Adam and our great buddy who graces us with his presence once a year for this special event, Mr. Aaron Oddities. Hey, buddy.
Hey, guys.
I usually ask what the overall impression of this summer was, but I guess I'll still ask it. Do we have an overall impression of the summer, or do we want to wait till the end until after we've reviewed everything?
Well, I know what the summer. I remember '94, so I can tell you what that summer was.
Yeah, me too.
That was. I mean, obviously, that was the summer of. Officially, that was the summer of Gump. It came out midsummer, but it kind of ruled from the moment it came out for the next year. It was the summer of Gump. But even though that was the thing that was everyone's talking about, there was a lot of other good stuff that summer. Natural Born Killers and Speed were kind of the two highlights for me. And of course, I guess the other big film that summer was Lion King, and it just felt like a lot of talk of Hollywood not knowing what to do, and there's always that, and there's always sequels and retreads and all that. But there was enough variety back then in both the mainstream and in the indie world, even in the summer, that there was almost at least something at the very least decent to watch every week, and a lot of times there was even something better than decent every week to watch. So '94 is actually a good movie year. It's almost as good as '93. There's some really great stuff in '94.
I was not a particular fan of that movie summer, actually. I was disappointed more often than not. There are a few things that I return to personally that I saw that summer that were good movies and still are, but the ratio of, for me personally, hits to misses, where there are a whole hell of a lot more misses than hits. So I think '93 was a much stronger year, but that's just me.
Okay, and of course, when you're talking about the summer, Pulp Fiction was in the fall, right?
Yes,
right. But the Cannes Film Festival was in May, so it was just something we were. I remember just waiting for,
anticipating that,
waiting for it, and even then in the summer, late summer, you had not only Natural Born Killers, which had a very tenuous Tarantino connection, but you also had the little movie Killing Zoe with Eric Stoltz that Roger Avey directed. And so you just had all this talk that was just leading up to, and Pulp Fiction was going to finally arrive.
Yeah, I think in general it was the year of Tarantino.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of knockoffs too, but the year itself, leading up to the following year, the Oscars, it was Gump versus Pulp Fiction. So the summer still had a staying power even at the following year. Let's not shoot our wad. Let's go ahead and talk about these releases and test Aaron's theory that there was something good that came out every week.
Okay.
Does anyone know what Widow's Peak is? I don't know what that is.
I do. That's a very good movie. It was Mia Farrow, John Plowright. I forget who the third woman is. There's one more, and it was just kind of this very fun, complicated mystery involving widows. This town where there are a lot of widows, and I remember it had a twist ending. I remember it was very good at the time. I haven't seen it in years, and it had a twist ending that startled everyone. And it was one of those fun twists endings that everyone talked about. and it was a surprise, hit. And it was in that, there's that period in the late '80s to the mid '90s where we were getting all these, I guess, lack of a better word, quirky Irish and British kind of human comedies, and this was one of those in that mix. And
John Irvin. John Irvin was the director, and the third woman was Natasha Richardson.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
there was
if they
a lot
remade
of talk.
that movie today, Liam Neeson would be in that role.
Right. And the talk at the time was that
Terrible.
it was Mia Farrow's first on-screen appearance in 2 years since Husbands and Wives, and she's actually pretty good in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those deals.
So that's her first post-Woody scandal movie.
Right.
A few days later, Three Ninjas Kick Back. Now, how many Three Ninjas movies were there?
There were a lot. People don't remember the first Three Ninjas movie was an August '92 release and was a surprise hit. So then we got this sequel that just wasn't, and the first Ninja is actually has modest charms. If you're 8 years old, the first Three Ninjas movies, it has, it's actually, pretty fun entertainment. And this, believe it or not, just doesn't live up to the first Three Ninjas movies.
Yes. It doesn't hold a candle to the John Turteltaub original.
Right.
All right.
I was going to say, it doesn't get the job done. Let's go ahead and get that out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. May 6th, also on that date, Being Human. Isn't that the Robin Williams thing?
That's
Robin
correct.
Williams. What's the guy's name? The guy that did Local Hero.
Bill Forsythe.
Bill Forsythe. Yeah, that was it was a big disaster.
It was.
Apparently, it was on the shelf for maybe 2 years, a year and a half. I know it was on the shelf for a long, long time.
I think you're right.
Then they dumped it. I remember the story. I think I saw it like a year later on HBO. The story I remember when they reviewed it on Siskel and Ebert. The studio only gave them 2 clips to show. So they're like, this is all we can show you, these 2 clips. So, I mean, that's how much they wanted to bury that movie. Yeah.
One man must learn the meaning of courage across 4 lifetimes, centuries apart.
It was a sad falling from grace for Forsythe. I mean, Local Hero, Gregory's Girl, and so all those other films, and then Robin Williams. I mean, he was coming off of Doubtfire. Obviously, they thought if they thought they'd get some Doubtfire momentum on because Doubtfire was just leaving theaters.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think Bill Forsythe's career ever recuperated from that, if I'm not correct. I think. I don't remember him ever.
He did a sequel to Gregory's Girl years later that I heard is actually pretty good, but it got no traction here in the States.
Anyway.
Also on that date, Dana Carvey, comedy, Clean Slate with Valeria Golino. And I was wondering just the other day, whatever happened to Valeria Golino? And I looked her up, and she's still around. But man, she made herself. She appeared in a lot of movies during this time.
And a lot of comedies.
An It Girl.
It Comedy Girl. She was very good at comedy. She's in this, Hot Shots, and Hot Shots 2, and all that. And I will confess, I like Clean Slate. I think it's fun. I think it's one of the. It's actually probably it's the good Dana Carvey vehicle. It's a good Dana Carvey vehicle. He had a few of those, and most of them weren't very good. Master of Disguise, Opportunity Knocks. This was the one that really suited him best. I like Clean Slate, and there's some good sly satire. There's a couple of gags that the stuff with the dog is very funny. A dog with depth perception problems, and there's a couple of riffs on the third man in a couple of scenes. So there's some smart stuff in there. It's a smart, but the thing is, this movie didn't do too well because, frankly, this was the year of Jim Carrey, and so Dana Carvey looked a little more restraint in the year of Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Also on that date, the last release on that particular date is a Yahoo Serious movie. Remember Yahoo Serious?
Mm-hmm.
This was called Reckless Kelly. It's a 1993 movie that didn't get released until 94.
Did not know that existed.
He plays an Australian Robin Hood, a bank robber, a pop culture hero, and a video shop owner. That's who we need to look up. We need to look up and find out what happened to Yahoo Serious.
Yeah. That would be
We need to get that dude on the show.
Yeah.
He's in the Australian outback somewhere.
It's him and Paul Hogan.
Yep, I think so.
May 11th. May 11th, the following, I suppose it's a Wednesday maybe. Probably one of the most controversial films prior to its release because it involved the death of an actor, and that is The Crow, Brandon Lee. It was hard to escape the shroud of tragedy, even though I know a lot of people dig that movie, but I'm curious if they would dig it if it wasn't associated with his death as much. But what do you think of that movie? Adam first, what do you think of that movie?
I think it's good. I'm not going to say it's great, but it was a solid, movie of its type. The tragic accident notwithstanding, if you didn't have any prior knowledge of that, I think that you would find it generally engrossing and entertaining, and it's not something that you're going to ponder its meanings for any length of time afterwards, but I enjoyed it. I do remember having a good time with it when it came out, so yeah.
It's a movie truly of its moment, and that the visual style, that grunge visual style, the soundtrack was a big deal, and it's a quite effective visual piece of filmmaking. Alex Proyas kind of really announced himself with that movie, and it was a real calling card movie. So visually it's pretty stunning, and it was a real calling card movie, and 4 years later he would deliver on that with Dark City.
Yeah, he did, and Dark City unfortunately really didn't take him very far.
Well, Dark City was crushed by a little movie called Titanic.
Yeah, sadly.
But, Dark City has, obviously withstood the test of time. Well, and so has Titanic. And The Crow, it made, I think, $50 million. So, it was a legit hit, and critics did approve of it. And it has withstood time. It does hold up quite well. Its sequels, straight-to-video sequels, are not good. But, The Crow still stands. The Crow flies.
Yeah. The Crow flies. There we go. Good.
Okay, and 2 days later, we had the Spike Lee family dramedy, Crooklyn. I will say my memory of Crooklyn is, managing a movie theater at the time. I remember we had to put up signs for people that bought tickets for it because there's a place in the movie where he switches from a scope format to the flat format, so it just stretches everything out. And it's supposed to, it's a directorial choice that indicates he's in kind of a different state of mind, the child character at that point in time in his life, and it's disorienting and weird for him. But of course, most moviegoers aren't savvy enough to know that it's not indicative of something being wrong with the projector. It's actually meant to be that way. So we had to post signs everywhere. I, as a big lover of Spike Lee, I thought the movie was okay. But certainly he's had much better efforts.
Yeah, I saw that theatrically because at that point I was seeing pretty much everything Spike Lee made as soon as it came out. And I did not know about that sequence where he was distorting everything with his use of lenses. And I immediately saw that happening and thought that it was a projectionist issue because typically projectionists would, use the wrong lens. But I couldn't imagine why they would do it in the middle of the movie. But
we posted those signs for you.
I wish we had one in the theater where I saw it, but I did complain to myself. I didn't actually go out and file a complaint or anything, but it cleared up. So I said, well, okay, it's a stylistic choice. I figured it out at that point. But it's kind of a middling effort, so to speak. And coming on, I think wasn't that his first movie after Malcolm X? And of course, I think I had high expectations after Malcolm X because I was quite impressed with that. So a little bit of a letdown. Not gonna lie about it. So
I'm a big Crooklyn fan. It actually made my top 10 that year. It was his first PG film. It was his first quote unquote family film. So it was a real change of pace. And the thing about Crooklyn, it really meanders for about an hour. Kind of don't know where it's going. And it takes a while before you realize that the lone girl of the family is actually the lead. Like you're not even told she's the real lead for about the first 20 minutes. And it kind of meanders, and then it starts to come together, and then it kind of really comes together in the last act of the film and really gets in power. And it owes a lot to it's really his Amarcord. Like Fellini's Amarcord, and it's just a lot of memories and riffs and incidents, and some of them kind of add up, some of them don't, but it's just kind of this more of a evocation.
I think a lot of directors
period.
have that. A lot of directors have that. Like if you think about Radio Days or Avalon, or they got those kind of intimate childhood memory movies. Mm-hmm. If not autobiographical, just the feeling and the sensation of where they grew up is represented there.
And they always start off kind of meandering, and you're kind of wondering, is there a point to this? And usually, particularly like in Avalon, the last act, you realize everything has been leading up to something on purpose, even though it didn't feel that way. And I think Crooklyn is the same way. It kind of feels meandering and pointless, but then the last act, it really packs a punch.
I mean, I feel that there's an element of a lot of my favorite Spike Lee movies that are meandering with a purpose, and that he allows characters time to breathe and communicate, and we really get a sense of their world. And the last movie I felt that way, that I felt was absolutely stunning because of it, was The Florida Project.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not opposed to that kind of approach. I just, when you're dealing with, I guess it's the logic of expectations, because you automatically believe, oh God, another hard-hitting Spike Lee punch in the gut for which he was known. And kudos to him for going in a different way.
And it was co-written with two of his siblings. I think his sister and his brother co-wrote it. I mean, it's funny. I guess maybe it's because I rewatched it, so I have it on the brain. But the movie that Crooklyn resembles a lot of is actually, of all things, My Girl, which was like 3 years earlier. If you look at My Girl, there's a lot. It has kind of similar trajectories. We just kind of follow in this summer, and this girl for the summer. They have kind of similar.
My Girl.
Yeah.
My Girl, which was shot 10 minutes away from me.
Huh.
And I've gone all the way to LA to see movie locations, but I've never tried to find the movie locations 10 minutes away from me. But there you go.
Never.
On that same date, Paul Rodriguez, remember him? He directed and starred in a movie called A Million to One.
I actually saw that.
I have no doubt.
And apparently, that was the last Rodriguez film I saw after until Ali this season. But apparently, he has made quite a few movies, like written and or directed. But Million to One, I think, was the last one I actually got a I guess you could say, a legit semi-wide release. Um, it's watchable. It's competently made. It's not a bad movie. It's just nothing too memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one I totally skipped.
May 18th. Here's one of the certified disasters of the season. Even to this day, I play the soundtrack because I love Katie Lang. And that is Even Cowgirls Get the Blues.
Oh, God.
Gus Van Sant's adaptation of a difficult novel.
Yeah. An unfilmable novel, basically.
Uma Thurman, Pat Morita. I mean, that tells you right there. Uma Thurman, Pat Morita, Katie Lang, Gus Van Sant.
Rain Phoenix, a lot of people. Yeah, that was on the shelf for a long time. I believe the story I heard, it actually had its world premiere at the Toronto Film Festival the year before, and it was a disaster, unmitigated disaster, and so they had to recut it, and then they released it, in May, and that didn't do anything. And that was one of those dream projects for Van Sant. Like there was one of those deals where like he was at years and years earlier. He saw the author at a book signing and said, "Hey, I'm going to make a film of your book one day." And the author was like, "Okay," one of those deals, and he just kept at it. And it's one of those, you watch the movie and you realize you wonder, okay, is the source material better than this? It has to be, but then you also wonder, like, what's in the source material that is interesting, that appealing, that feels that this should be made. It feels like a true warmed over 1960s hippy dippy movie, but not even a good one, So it's and then, but
he shouldn't worry about it because decades from now, someone will remake it shot for shot, and we'll see how that goes.
I've read the novels. Tom Robbins wrote that, and I thoroughly enjoy. But I respond to Tom Robbins anyway as a general rule, and I like the novel. But it's not the kind of thing that translates well into film. It's there's a lot of just intellectual stuff that translates better when you're reading it than it would be cinematically. So totally bad idea to.
Okay, the following week, the first attempt at a summer blockbuster comes with Maverick. Mel Gibson assumes the James Garner role from the TV series, but Garner's still there as the second fiddle. And Richard Donner directs, who's typically a very reliable filmmaker.
Want to be Blockbuster, and it was a hit. It made it was one of those quiet films that made $100 million.
The thing is, I remember enjoying it, but it never pops in my mind. It's never popped in my mind since. So I've never had an occasion where I've thought, hey, I'll rewatch Maverick. I've never given it a second thought.
Yeah.
There are these phenomenons in the summer, I've noticed, where there'll be a movie that is a technical blockbuster, makes $100 million. And it's literally I guess a take the money and run kind of scenario, because you're like, well, they left it open for a sequel, and when are we going to get the sequel? And so they left Maverick, and they're like, well, we're obviously going to get a Maverick 2 at some point. We never got a Maverick 2. I remember SWAT was another one, and SWAT's actually a good movie, good summer movie. And I was like, well, we should get a SWAT 2 at some point. And I think we did straight to video, but never got a theatrical SWAT 2.
Die Swatter.
But Maverick, the problem, Maverick's actually, it is extremely well made. I mean, top notch, top budget. Richard Donner, no slouch as a filmmaker. It is long by about 15 minutes, too long, and there's way too many double crosses. You get a little dizzy in the last 20 minutes of the film. Everyone double crossing each other. It too has a final twist that is kind of cute. That is cute, but is a little exhausting at the end. But there are 3 stars, and I actually responded to the extended sequence with Wes Studi doing Graham Greene doing a comic version of a hip Indian chief who befriends Maverick. I remember that being the highlight.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember it being an unusual movie for Jodie Foster because it was a big Hollywood summer fluff that she wasn't necessarily usually attached to at the time.
I saw it theatrically, and I can't tell you two things that happened in that movie. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember anything.
There's a runaway stagecoach sequence that is pretty. I remember that was being pretty impressive. Like it was like a big budget runaway stagecoach sequence. Like you didn't get those very often. And westerns done right and kept to to their traditions, they always will do well at the box office. Remember, we're just coming off of Tombstone, which was a surprise Christmas hit. And so Maverick also is in that vein of a studio western, giving the audience another one. And in fact, we're going to get a western later on in the summer that tries to be different, and it doesn't do too well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, May 25th. Bad. Just so bad. Beverly Hills Cop 3. John Landis directed this one, right? And it's just so inert. It looks just so lifeless.
To hear Landis tell the story, head of the studio called him up, I believe it was Sherry Lansing at the time, said, hey, want you to do Beverly Hills Cop 3. And he's like, okay, did you ask Eddie? Is Eddie going to be in it? Because they'd had a falling out. And according to Landis, he's like, no, Eddie asked for you. He's like, really? He's like, well, okay, I'll do it. And it was a rush job. He gets on set, and he's like, all right, let's get to it. All right, Eddie, how do you want to improv in this scene? And Eddie Murphy's like, no, I'm not going to improv here. He goes, Axel's a man now, and so he's not wisecracking every 2 minutes. And Landis went, according to Landis, he went, well, well, if Axel's not wisecracking, I don't know if we have a movie here. So he goes, so I had to work around the times Eddie didn't feel like wisecracking. And you watch the movie and you can see it.
I just read some interview with Eddie Murphy. It's not a new interview. I think it's like the last Playboy interview he did.
Yeah, and, 92, I think. Yeah.
Well, and he talks about Landis in none too glowing terms.
Right.
And, I guess there's a reason why everybody's back for this new Coming to America except for him. It's Craig Brewer directing this new one. They just didn't quite get along. Even though, Landis kind of helped put him on the map cinematically.
They do a lot of action scenes. They're like, okay, we're just going to have to up the action in this film. And it just... and you can... Any little moments of like levity in it are kind of at the mercy of Landis, with his cameos of his, like George Lucas has a cameo in there, and and there's a couple other little gags that you're like, okay, well that's a Landis thing, and that's giving me something to look at.
You could say that Axel Foley was a man in that one, but if that's what Eddie Murphy wanted to approach him, but it's just a stupid setting. I mean, it's just a kiddie-ish. Literally a kiddie-ish setting, but the only thing that is in any way to be remarked upon about this movie is there's a Ferris wheel scene that's slightly better than everything else in the entire movie.
Yeah, and it has that's a neat sequence, and you're like, okay, and the thing about a Beverly Hills Cop movie, if you look at any of them, 1, 2, or 3. All you need is like a few wisecracks and about 3-4 good action sequences, and a few, couple of good comic dialogue scenes to connect them. We're not talking like, anything that's going to reinvent the wheel here, but they can't even, they couldn't even do that here, and it just.
Well, that's the problem too with continuing a story that essentially worked on the basis of it being a fish out of water story, because eventually that character gets out of the water. It's like it's not playing with that card anymore. So you got to come up with some other trick.
You know, there's something wrong when John Ashton doesn't even return for the third one. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here.
Okay, the same day we have Federal Hill, which is the Michael Corrente crime movie. I remember there being a lot of talk about Michael Corrente. Was it based on this movie, or was this his debut movie, or was it something before?
That's his debut movie. So it's based on that, and then from that he got American Buffalo.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which on the surface seems like it would be a prestige project. American Buffalo. Was this like a Sundance thing?
It was a Sundance thing. It was a Sundance film. And the interesting thing about that, it was actually filmed in black and white, but when they released it on video, they colorized it.
Mm.
It was a Miramax.
They colorized it.
Yeah, I think
I
remember that.
It wasn't shot in color, and they made it black and white for the theatrical. They actually had to colorize it.
Right.
Wow.
I think so. Yeah.
That's
and it was like going to be Nick Turturro's big, coming out. Like, ooh, Nick Turturro's the new guy. It's like his brother, and he's pretty remarkable in the film. And it just so it's a really, I just rewatched it a little while ago, and it's really it's one of the better Mean Streets knockoffs.
Yeah, Mean Streets. I got that on TV right now. I put it on pause when I started the show. Also on that day, Bernardo Bertolucci. Every time I read this title, I think I sing it in the tune of Elton John's "Little Genie." So it's like,
little Buddha.
Little Buddha, you got so much love. Right.
Little Buddha.
Keanu Reeves headline
as
this
the
one.
Buddha. Yeah. As the Buddha. I've never seen it all the way through. From what if I remember from the Peter Biskin Miramax book, Harvey Scissorhands really did a number on this one. So there is a different version, a Bertolucci version of this that I have to assume is probably a better version than what was released.
One would hope, from what I hear,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but you forget that. Keanu Reeves worked with Bernardo Bertolucci.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of those odd pairings that must have been quite an experience. But
it's pretty amazing.
The following week, on May 27th, there's a big fat certifiable hit that grossed $130 in the U.S., $341 worldwide, and that is The Flintstones. When you think of the casting, first of all, the casting was kind of picture perfect. I mean, you wouldn't cast anyone else in these roles. John Goodman as Fred, and Rick Moranis as Barney, and then you got Rosie O'Donnell as Betty Rubble. It was. Do we like this movie? I know we don't like the second.
I never saw it, and it wasn't because I was adverse to seeing it. It's just by the time 1994 rolled around, I'm like 16 years old.
Yeah.
So this is totally outside my purview. Now, if this movie had come out 10 years earlier, I'd be all over it, and it'd probably be my favorite film. I do admit when I would see the trailer, I was very impressed with the production design. The car and the house and the clothing. I was like, man, they really did truly a live action Flintstones. And so when I remember when it finally came on HBO a year later, and I would watch 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, I was like, I would just watch the production design. Just watch for like, it looked cool seeing that stuff, in 3D as it were. Yeah. Animated. And so, I mean, I don't know. I do remember the thing was they wanted Sharon Stone to play the character Sharon Stone, but she turned it down to do, I don't know, Intersection or some other bad movie. So they got Liz Taylor to play Sharon Stone.
That's what I was going to mention. They brought in Liz Taylor, who hadn't done a movie in quite a while at that point, I believe. And I saw it theatrically. I actually did go see it, and it is a triumph in production design. You're right. It does look great. I mean, they couldn't have done a better job bringing bringing it to life. Like you said, to the third dimension. But it's just, there's just the story's just so blah. I guess they just didn't do a whole lot with it.
Something like the Addams Family movie.
Yes, exactly.
Where, which also was, they brought that to life, but they had a little fun tweaking it. Or the Brady Bunch movie the following year, where you get the production design right, and then you gotta tweak it a little somehow.
Yeah.
But
something like the Addams Family. You had the contrast of them associating with the normal people, and that's where a lot of the comedy came from. But where are the normal people in the Flintstones that don't normally occupy that world? Where are the contrasts there?
Yeah, good point.
The Last Spring. Do we know what The Last Spring is?
No, we don't.
I don't. I am curious.
The Last Spring, a group of high school friends who have been on the same softball team for 20 years deal with the breakup of their team. And there's
I do remember.
That
I do remember also in May. I don't know if it's in there, but also that May, the two other films that people talked about were Kika, Almodovar. The movie came out that May. It was controversial with Peter Coyote, and it wasn't very good. Had a quote unquote rape scene played for laughs. I think was a big controversy.
Wow.
And that one, Kika. Oh, and the last River Phoenix movie came out, Silent Tongue. It was also in May.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not on my calendar here, but yeah.
Which is also awful. So.
I wonder how the director's cut of that. No. Silent Tongue. I show Silent Tongue is March 1st. Anyway.
I just remember it as Siskel and Ebert having it in May. So, I don't know.
It might have been a limited release or something that was making its way around.
They probably just spent 2 months keeping a silent tongue about it.
Good point.
Okay. June 1st, a movie called Windrunner, which I see is a young man in high school moves with his mother to a town in the U.S. Southwest where his father is serving time in a penitentiary. There, he is discriminated against by his peers because he is the son of the convict. Very small movie, I'm sure, but it got some kind of theatrical. June 3rd, The Cowboy Way, Kiefer Sutherland and who's the other guy in that? Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson. Yeah, that's one of those movies that is, you look at it now. That is one of those movies that's all about the charm and star power of Woody Harrelson. I mean, Kiefer has top billing and he's fun in it, but that's all about the charm and star power of Woody Harrelson. And it goes to this theory that a friend of mine has, that Woody Harrelson, like Bill Paxton, is one of those actors who, even in the worst film, he is always the bright spot. He's the one. He'll be the one good thing in any movie. I've yet to been able to disprove that, even in looking at Woody Harrelson's bad movies. It's no, Woody's the bright spot in the movie. So yeah, Cowboy Way is one of those. It adds up to nothing, but Woody's a lot of fun in that movie.
I remember when it came out, and I just had zero interest in that, and I said, there is no way I'm going to see that. So no way for The Cowboy Way for me, and I have not seen it in the intervening years. So
there's a couple of fun scenes in there. He has a lot of fun with Mark Helgenberger. It's kind of the lusty female, sidekick. She's a lot of fun, and Ernie Hudson's fun as a cop on a patrolman on a horse. He's always wanted to be a cowboy.
Please. You had me at Marge Helgenberger. Okay. Also on that day, a documentary sequel, The Endless Summer 2.
Yeah.
Yep. And I never saw the first one, so So
yeah,
I didn't see the sequel, but I remember it was out.
28 years later after the first one. The first one was made in '66, I believe.
I'll just stick to the Dogtown and Z-Boys doc. Much better.
Then I have also on that day a movie called The Princess and the Goblin, an animated film, which...
Don Bluth?
No. It's Joseph Gaines. It's a German name. But it says it was completed in 91, but not released until 94, at least in the States. Anyway, that came out on that day as well. Also on that date, we have Renaissance Man. Renaissance Man is that Danny DeVito military thing, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, Penny Marshall's follow-up to A League of Their Own. I saw this many a time on HBO. It's one of those films that, I don't know, on HBO, it's like one of those things that sucks you in. Yeah, he's... and DeVito's actually quite good in it, and you know, a lot of the young actors are, you know, you could tell they're like going to be some talent. And Wahlberg, it's Wahlberg's first film. Wahlberg's in there. Lilo Brancato is in there, coming off of Bronx Tale. And who can forget everyone's favorite conservative, Stacey Dash, coming off of Clueless. Or no, before Clueless. I take it back. And so Gregory Hines is probably the most tolerant and understanding drill instructor in film history. So it's a goofy military teen comedy. It's just kind of the goofy hybrid. But there are scenes, you know, but it has that Penny Marshall sweetness to it, and it's not as good as Big. It's not as good as Big or League of Their Own, but there's a sequence where they're doing a drill in the rain, and Lilo Brancato recites the speech from Henry V, and somehow that scene works. So it's a weird movie.
Well, I always regarded it as just another one of those dismissible Touchstone movies. You know, they kind of all bled in together, and I think that was a Touchstone. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was. I believe
Touchstone,
it was.
Hollywood Pictures.
The next week, a lackluster sequel, I think. So much so that, you know, I skipped it.
Yeah.
Borrow Adam's term. City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold.
Yep.
This one, I did see this one. I will say that, and I think it's worth noting that this is supposedly, you know, there's always been that urban legend that Bruno Kirby's career was derailed when he failed to sign on for City Slickers 2. And the official word was, of course, that he wanted more money than they were willing to give him, and that was Billy Crystal's side of the story anyway. And after this, his career pretty much for the most part, became non-existent. I mean, what he didn't do a whole lot, and there's always...
Who are you talking about?
We're talking about Bruno Kirby. How his career, because he failed to appear in this film, and there's always been this story that he was that basically Billy Crystal did what he could to, because he wouldn't participate in the film, that he did what he could to derail his career, and that was one of the reasons why he hardly turned up in anything else up until his death. And they never worked together again, that's for sure. And he was, you know, up until this point, his career was pretty much on fire. But if you look at his resume, it doesn't look good. And I know that one of the I think it was the critic for USA Today, I can't remember her name, I'm friends with her on Facebook actually, but she actually asked Billy Crystal about it in an interview, and he got really angry when she brought it up. He just was not happy. They didn't want to discuss it. And so, anyway, I think where there's smoke, there's fire on that, in my opinion. I
don't know how much Billy Crystal power he had even in '94 to derail a career of a character actor. I know they had a falling out. What I'd always heard was the story I always heard from Bruno Kirby is that he thought Billy, you know, could kind of boss him around, and Bruno Kirby's like, look, I worked with I was in Godfather 2. I've worked with, De Niro and Biggie and Nicholson and all that. I'm not just some sidekick. So
Right.
So they had like that friendship falling out deal, and then either way, if they, I don't know if that movie would have worked with Bruno Kirby. It would have been better because I can only take John Lovitz in small doses, and
Yes.
and
No, and then they bring back, Jack Palance, and that you talk about stretching credibility to claim that he's a twin, that's his twin brother. That's really stretching credibility. So.
Yeah. I remember I went to a Bobcat Goldthwait concert when the first City Slickers was a big hit, and Bobcat Goldthwait opened up his act by saying, "City Slickers, a movie about 4 middle-aged guys that go off to the wilderness to find their smile or something." And he's like, "Yeah, that movie's definitely not made for me." Anyway,
I saw it.
The first one has genuine heart and is genuinely
Yeah.
good, and they obviously with the sequel they're like, well, how do we bring back Jack Palance? And basically they're like, well, we can't do Arthur 2 because that ghost thing just doesn't work. And so they're like, well, twin brother, that's better than a ghost, right? And actually, twin brother is not better than a ghost. It's just as bad.
Let me just say that because I go through every month to post on our social media pages, on this date in Movie Geeks United history, and I post an interview that we premiered on that date to kind of go back through our archives. And this month I was shocked. I went back and I was like, I interviewed John Lovitz, and I could not remember interviewing him, but apparently I did. And it was so many years ago this month.
And I like Lovitz like in A League of Their Own or in Happiness, where he does 10 minutes. I think it's hysterical. But when you give him
he's got the funniest line in The League of Their Own.
Right.
See how it works is the train moves, not the station.
Right. And so, that is great stuff. But when you give him a full supporting role, it's like nails on a chalkboard. And then for some reason, Daniel Stern, who was actually very good in the first one, even when he's all hyper, is so hyper in the second one that, between him and Lovitz, this is not a trip you want to go on. Like, you really want to run away.
Yeah. Okay. Also on that date, let me tell you this. I saw this movie early because I guess we got a print of it early, and so I had to screen it for quality control at the theater. And I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, this movie is fantastic. This movie works like better than it has any right to. And the following night, Dennis Hopper was speaking in Orlando, and I was wanting to go there just to tell him how great I thought this movie was, because it was kind of an under the radar movie, and that of course is Speed. Yep. Jan de Bont's Speed. That I had no expectations for before watching it, but man, yeah, it works.
I saw it I think a week or 2 weekends before it opened. Me and my mom went to one of those Saturday night screenings that they would do, sneak previews. And back then, they would do the sneak preview, and then you could stay and see the movie. The
double bill, yeah.
And so I remember. So talk about double bill. It was Speed followed by When a Man Loves a Woman. There's your double bill right there. So that's called a tonic for you right there. You're all jacked up after Speed, and then you go see When a Man Loves a Woman. That brings you down right to earth. And I saw Speed. Audience went crazy. And it was one of those movies, you're watching this movie, it's like, okay, when is this movie going to, go wrong? Because there's no way, no movie has a right to be this good and not mess up. Like, there's nothing wrong with this movie, and it's just going and going and going and going. And the thing is, if you saw the trailer even then, all you saw was the bus. And so when that movie starts, you're like, wait, what are we doing? We're doing this section? You get 3 for the price of 1. Everyone, of course, if you hadn't seen Point Break, and at that point, Point Break was still a little cult film that wasn't a hit that only a handful of people knew about, everyone was like, "Whoa, Keanu Reeves can be an action star." Sandra Bullock became an instant star, even though she'd been coming up on the radar. She was like in Demolition Man and Wrestling Ernest Hemingway, but she was going to be a star. And Hopper was having a great year because he was just coming off of Red Rock West like 2 months earlier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like vintage Hopper. So yeah,
everybody's career got a jump start in that movie. Because it made Jan de Bont too. It's just that I rewatched it. I rewatched it a few months ago, and I think that because it's one of those impossible scenarios, and you're thinking to yourself, how do they maintain this premise without cheating? And I think they do a great job at that. But at the same time, the main flaw for me is every single character actor on that bus is terrible. I mean, their performances are awful.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the passengers. I think the unsung hero of that film, people didn't know that at the time, was revealed later. It got an uncredited rewrite by Joss Whedon, and so a lot of the dialogue is Joss Whedon, and so that really kind of ups the ante on the quality of that dialogue. And also, it was a good showcase for Jeff Daniels, and he was going to have a good year because Dumb and Dumber is coming later on.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a masterfully done movie. I saw it opening weekend, and I was quite impressed. And
I remember it opened the weekend of the Bronco chase, so I remember there were a lot of bad late night jokes.
No, it didn't. It opened the weekend before the Bronco chase.
Oh, I was going to say, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when the Bronco chase happened, there was a lot of bad speed jokes correlating the Bronco chase with speed.
Yes, because it happened the week after, and it was in the vernacular. Speed was.
Yep.
We're about to get to that. June 15th, The Lion King, an almost $1 billion grosser. That was a huge movie. And tying this back into my time promoting, I won like third place in the nation for my marketing of that movie, and Disney gave me I think $5,000 and a year's supply of Coke or something like that.
Wow.
A year's supply of cocaine?
And, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
We're talking Disney here. They got the funds. The Lion King, I do remember seeing it, and I'm typically not an animation person, but it felt like the kind of foolproof, timeless story that worked emotionally, and obviously it did, judging by how much it grossed, but I've never returned to it. And that includes the remake.
It is. I mean, they upped the ante in the animation because it was their follow-up. It was the first thing since Aladdin, and the animation was bolder. The story was darker and deeper for children, and the characterizations were a little deeper, a little more depth, had a little more emotional resonance to it, and. Of course, what's interesting that was like I think at the moment, for a moment there, the fourth highest grossing film of all time, and then Gump came a month later and knocked it out. And so
Gump came.
And then what's interesting about this new Lion King, the one that just came out, that a lot of critics weirdly dumped on for no apparent reason. It has stayed in the top 5 for 8 weeks straight, and that is pretty remarkable consistency in this day and age. Usually movies do not stay in the top 5 that long in this day and age, but it is still in the top 5.
You're talking about the remake?
The remake, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to admit, I thought I saw The Lion King when it came out. I thought it was fine, but hardly the event that everybody else seems to think that it is. The animation is good. The story is, it's interesting enough, but once was enough for me, and there are at least a half a dozen better Disney movies that I could name without even thinking about them that I think are much superior, and I just never understood why that one just seemed to get into the national consciousness the way it did.
Well, it was so well marketed too, and it was attached to an Elton John soundtrack that played on a loop. You could not get away from those songs. No. I mean, so one definitely complemented the other in terms of just the music alone.
And it has a primal appeal, like some of the other, of parental death and child, the shame, and I mean, it deals a little, with shame and blame, and so these are very primal emotions that kids can really get into, and I think that's
when you look at it, you could see it as a very calculated structure, where they look at what worked over emotionally in previous Disney movies, and they incorporated it all into this one. Anyway,
I mean, it's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I appreciate it for what it does well, but I just don't think it's one of the top tier Disney films. But that's just me. So anyway.
Okay, the following 2 days later, Getting Even with Dad, which was remade later as Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. But this one stars Macaulay Culkin and Ted Danson, that unbelievable chemistry they shared.
This was the swan song year of Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah,
he has like 3 films this year. He has this, Pagemaster, and the one good film, Richie Rich, at the end of the year. And Getting Even with Dad was just one of those, it was probably released 2 years too late. And it was like, bad John Hughes, knockoff. And just doesn't work. It was one of those films, even on HBO, I couldn't watch it. It would come on. It's like, I can't even watch this on HBO.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Howard Deutsch movie.
There you go.
So, like you said, John Hughes alumni.
And Ted Danson is and the thing is, Ted Danson, they always try to make him, I guess because through the baby, they try to we'll put him in these family films. He's not usually a very warm actor. There's something a little cool and cold about him, and he's, they try to tamper that down, and that's when he doesn't work that way.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Okay. Also on that day, this is the night of the O.J. car chase, and it's also the opening night of Wolf. Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer, Mike Nichols. And I remember Nicholson saying, we did well considering that nobody went to the movies that Friday night because they were all glued to the television set watching that chase. And it did still do relatively well for a movie that, I have rewatched Wolf in the intervening years, and it's fine. It doesn't feel as good as it could be. Mike Nichols is a really odd director for it, and I can't really see much of him in the movie anyway. But
there was that.
It's one of those where you think that Nicholson is perfect for it, but that's not enough to make the movie good or great. It's a good movie. It's just not a great one.
The opening is terrific, as Nichols is kind of this milquetoast. He's actually quite good as playing this milquetoast kind of guy, and gets awakened, and his inner beast gets brought out. And you just wish they'd gone a little further with kind of the bestiality of the whole situation. There's a whole spate where they went back to the old stories and did these adult versions. You had Frankenstein, you had Wolf, and Dracula, Coppola's Dracula. They're trying to do these modern or these adult takes on these old stories, and Wolf is that, and they don't make enough. You have Spader as kind of the bad guy, and they don't make enough use of Spader facing off with Nicholson. I do like the final confrontation. I just wish it went further, and it's one of those things you can tell the obvious template that they have here is The Fly, but there's just more passion and more energy in The Fly than there is in Wolf. But the production of Wolf, the production value of Wolf is pretty stunning.
That's just it. it really distinguishes itself with the production. I mean, from Morricone's score to the art direction and the production design, and they used the Bradbury building for his office, and so you have those elevators that look like cages that they're coming in and out of, and it feels thematically right for it. It's a handsome-looking movie. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it was a letdown. I was disappointed with it.
I remember the story that I always hear. My good friend Mike Clark, who is the former chief critic for USA Today, he actually gave Wolf 4 stars, and he gave Lion King 3.5 that weekend. And he says he got a note from Katzenberg, who was upset that he didn't give Lion King 4, and he gave Wolf 4, because he wanted that headline, USA Today 4 stars Lion King. So he was very upset.
Well, I'm sure he wiped away his tears with mountains of cash.
I was gonna say he wanted the eye of the tiger, but anyway.
June 24th, Lawrence Kasdan's more serious take on the legend of Wyatt Earp, compared to Tombstone, which was much more successful. But is Wyatt Earp is it a good movie?
It's a long movie.
It's a long movie. Kasdan is very proud of that film. Apparently, there's a 4-hour cut. I think it was released on Laserdisc. I don't know if it got to tape or DVD, Blu-ray. But I know the Laserdisc was the 4-hour preferred cut. I never saw that. It's one of those films that it wants to like tell the real story, get beyond the myth and get to the truth of it. And that sounds a lot like, okay, that sounds cool, but it's such a chore. And you figure Costner and Kasdan doing a Western, you're like, okay, that sounds an epic Western, and you're like, Costner feels kind of disengaged in the performance. Dennis Quaid's actually quite good as Doc Holliday.
If you think about it, their previous Western that they did together, which was Silverado, was really like the Tombstone of its day. It's very breezy and fun to watch. But poor Dennis Quaid, because he put his whole body to the test doing that movie, and by any measures, it's a very good performance. But he had the specter of Val Kilmer, who everybody adored in Tombstone.
Yeah, Kilmer. Not only the performance, Kilmer had the better lines. He was just funny and charming, and he was just cool, and it was just one of those magical supporting performances that everyone talks about. And Quaid just seeing now Quaid does give a really good performance. It's just it was one of those movies they probably should have waited. Instead of the summer, they probably should have waited till Christmas. Should have waited a little longer.
Yeah. Maybe. I do like the James Newton Howard score. That's the one thing that I remember most about it. But,
Does he have the horns in it again?
There are horns in it, but there are horns in fucking 90% of the movies that came out in the 90s. They were big symphonic scores. Okay. The next week, here's an interesting disaster. And this had disaster written on it during production, too, because those two lead stars did not get along, presumably. I Love Trouble.
Yeah.
Nick Nolte, Julia Roberts.
It's one of those deals in hindsight, I could tell you, they're not going to get along. It's like, one is a prima donna, and the other one is Nick Nolte.
Yeah. One of them bathes. It's not a. It's one of those. It wants to be, His Girl Friday, but updated. Yeah. And just, and I get the feeling they just cast it without testing them. And the thing with, if you want to do His Girl Friday, you really need a screen test. Make sure they have the chemistry before you just cast them, and presume they will have the chemistry, because they didn't have it. Also on that date, Little Big League.
I'm actually quite a fan of that film. I think it's actually a very underrated baseball movie.
Okay.
Mic drop. Yeah. No, I think I prefer it to and I like Rookie of the Year. I prefer it to Rookie of the Year though.
Yeah. Those are some audacious words.
It's a smart movie it's actually a very smart movie with considering the premise of the film, it takes it seriously. And that's what you kind of want for a film to do. If you can have a ridiculous premise, take it seriously and we'll believe it. And it does that.
Mm-hmm.
July 1st, a John Hughes production, Baby's Day Out.
Right.
There's something a little, a baby like balancing itself on scaffolding. There's
some funny
child
gags
endangerment issues that wouldn't fly today. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the obvious inspiration is the Baby Herman sequence, the opening of Roger Rabbit is kind of the inspiration for that whole movie. And there are some kind of jaw-dropping sequences of like what they pull off, and it's that Roger Rabbit sequence crossed with the two crooks from Home Alone. Joe Mantegna's the lead crook, and so it's one of those movies. If you watch like it in 10-minute chunks, 'cause that's kind of how a 10-minute set piece is, you get the gist of it, and you will laugh. But if you watch all 80 minutes of it, it might be a little taxing. So it depends on how you do it.
It was further proof of the sad downward slide of John Hughes in the wake of Home Alone's success, which, incidentally, I'm not a big fan of Home Alone either, and this was just, for me, it was just further proof of a once great director who had given us some movies that would stand the test of time, just slumming it, basically, in my opinion. I chuckled a couple of times, I'll give you that, but, by and large, it was just, it was pretty painful. So, that's my take on it.
Also on that date, Blown Away. I remember Blown Away. Here's a story. Here's another theater manager story about Blown Away. So, as part of the promotion for that, they gave us a group of 50 T-shirts promoting the San Francisco Bomb Squad. It had that logo on the shirt, and so I put the box in my back seat. And I was eating somewhere with my girlfriend at the time, and we walked back out to the car, and there were some real Bomb Squad guys who were out in the parking lot looking in my car. And they said, "Are you on the Bomb Squad in San Francisco?" I said, "No, man, those are..." And they're like, "Well, we're real Bomb Squad people here locally." And so I gave them all a T-shirt. So that was my part to promote the movie.
And like Wyatt Earp, that movie had the misfortune of coming a month after Speed.
Yeah.
So the Mad Bomber movie that just did... There's a couple of sequences that are kind of really cool. The opening sequence is really cool where this girl has to keep typing. And if she stops typing, she's going to blow up. And so Jeff Bridges has to... defuse the bomb before she runs out of space of typing. That's a cool sequence. And there's another sequence where he thinks his house has a bomb, and we get these close-ups of ignitions, like a light switch turning on, the stove being turning on, and it's like okay,
that's when she enters the house. His wife enters the house and starts turning on the lights and stuff.
Yeah, those are cool sequences, but the rest of it is pretty bad. Tommy Lee Jones is literally phoning it in throughout the movie. Although I do love the bit where he discovers U2. That's pretty funny. And then, you get a little charge seeing Jeff and Lloyd Bridges in scenes together. You just kind of wish they had better dialogue and were in a better movie. So, yeah, it's a pretty bad movie.
I agree. Yeah, big letdown. I had high hopes for that. It looked really... really good. The trailers, I remember leading up to it, I was excited, and my excitement quickly dissipated once I saw it in the theater. So,
The Tommy Lee Jones singing along to U2. That's a YouTube clip. That's a GIF.
And it's the one movie where Jeff Bridges sees his own father getting blown away.
The better Blown Away movie is the one starring the two Coreys called Blown Away. That's the better Blown Away movie.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take it.
Yeah, I did rewatch Blown Away a couple of years ago. It's fine for what it is. I mean, it definitely feels of its time, like a disposable action movie that came out at that time.
Mm-hmm.
The Shadow.
Shadow
came out that same day.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin.
They're trying to do start a franchise for Baldwin. Clearly another comic book movie, not done well. You kind of wonder if, someone's like, hey, why don't we redo The Shadow since everyone's into the comic books. Once again, a case of good production design, and actually Baldwin's kind of fun in the movie, and so is Jonathan Winters. I always like Jonathan Winters. He's fun in it too. But I remember when I saw it, I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. I knew when I saw it, it's like, nope. This is less appealing to kids than Dick Tracy was.
Yeah. Agreed.
Written by David Kemp.
Mm-hmm.
And directed by Russell Macaulay.
And he's a real good visualist. Ricochet, Highlander, and a couple other movies.
The Real McCoy.
All those music videos too, right?
The Wild Boys, Duran Duran's Wild Boys.
Exactly.
Video.
Yeah.
The following week. Oh, well, here we go. When I first saw the trailer of this movie, I thought that's going to be a massive hit. And yet, it's still before it came out, it did still feel like and a kind of under the radar, unexpected success. Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that it was so global in its success was very unexpected. But of course, I'm talking about Forrest Gump.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now there's a lot of revisionism about Forrest Gump now, because I'm pretty confident that a lot of people that first saw it, that loved it, now know that it's uncool to say they loved it, and so they say, "Oh God, I hated that movie because it pandered, and it was too sentimental and all that kind of stuff that makes it uncool. It had its heart on its sleeve." But I guarantee a lot of those people loved it. And I know there are some people that hated it from the start. I understand. So you don't need to write me emails that I always knew that Forrest Gump was a piece of shit. That's fine.
It's in the tradition of kind of the Andy Griffith comedy albums. People don't know those. And that southern kind of satire of humor. That's a smart, dumb southerner that, think dumb, but it's actually a little smarter and gets one over on everyone else. I do think it's smart. I remember even at the time, the big thing was that the movie was that people thought the movie was very conservative, and that it was pro Gump but anti-hippie, anti-Ginny. They punished the movie. Everyone always said the movie punishes Ginny for being a hippie and for all her misdeeds, and just punishes the counterculture movement.
Yeah.
And that is on the surface. But I remember when I rewatched the movie a few years ago, it dawned on me. What I realized is that the audience and critics are judging Ginny. But the movie is very explicit in that Forrest, the character of Forrest Gump, never judges Ginny for what she does. He never passes judgment on her. And I think that's a crucial distinction that never gets pointed out. For all that she does, all that we see that she does, and she comes back and leaves him and all that, he never judges her for her behavior. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important. And and the mother, and Forrest's mother, is not judgmental. In fact, she brings in, she takes in the outsiders, the outcasts, and she, as a border. So the movie is very subtle in how it is accepting of those who are not accepted by society.
Yeah.
Aaron, Adam, what do you think?
Oh, I was going to say, I saw it the opening day when it came out on a Wednesday. Saw it in the first showing, afternoon. I went solely on the basis of it being directed by Robert Zemeckis, whom I was a big fan of at that point. And I didn't know anything about the movie. Knew it was based on a novel. Had zero expectations. And I just loved it. I loved it. It was one of those movies that transported me to, when you feel like you've been transported to another world or another place or another, I felt like I was in that world. And I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I really did. And in the intervening years, I have remained a fan of the movie as well. I still defend it, and they always said that in '94 you were either a Pulp Fiction person or a Forrest Gump person. Well, I was a person who loved both of those movies equally, and and I admit that I do have a sentimental streak that's about a mile wide running up my back, so that probably plays into it a little bit.
Well, I do too, and it definitely works on those terms. It's a very effective fable that I think is made less effective the more you look into it.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
What is it saying, Aaron? What's it saying?
I think, the takeaway for Forrest Gump is really just kind of the character's Gump is his indomitable spirit, but also in that, and this is kind of the key thing, a lot of what Forrest comes in contact with either gets hurt or gets altered or, frankly, dies. So he suffers a lot and he causes a lot of damage, but he's able to kind of keep moving forward, and that's kind of that's kind of how it works. And so it's a little darker than it's given credit for.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's the perception that a lot of what he's placed in are the darkest chapters of recent American history. Recent meaning the second part of the 20th century, and so to put someone who was completely, ill-equipped to understand what he's a part of, it almost belittles. It almost gives the audience permission to not regard those events as severe as it was. It puts a happy face on a lot of it, I think. Mm-hmm. Because you're experiencing it through the eyes of someone that doesn't understand the totality of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it has this dual reality. He doesn't understand the totality. We in the audience understand the totality. So there's this dual reality always going through the movie of what he understands and what we understand. And that's a unique perspective on it that the film has. It's the same thing that fuels something like Being There or even The World According to Garp. Mm-hmm. They have these dual realities.
But Being There, exactly. But the difference in tone between Being There and Forrest Gump is vast, because I think Being There is totally immersed in the environments it's playing in. It's not using them as kind of like Being There uses it in a satirical way. I don't feel the bite of any satire in Forrest Gump. It's completely the opposite. It's homespun. It's feel good. It's hard on your sleeve kind of stuff.
Well, it's more picaresque.
I was fortunate in that I saw it before there was any hype, and people weren't talking about it. It wasn't in the public consciousness. So I've had that advantage several times in my life, and I was so thankful that I was able to see it in that way before it started being a talking point all over the place. Because I really, like I said, it was all totally a surprise to me, and it was one of those movies where I couldn't wait to see where it was going to go, and like I said, I was pleasantly surprised and pleased.
I will say The one thing I do like about it, and I know it's because it goes on the source material. It wasn't one of those cases where Forrest Gump all of a sudden becomes a genius, and then he regresses back. Because every single movie that deals with some kind of mental impairment or disease that causes mental impairment, they all take the floor plan set out by something like Charlie, or something like that, where they start out sick, and then they have this experimental treatment, and they get much better, and then they slowly regress. Like every single third act, they have to slowly regress back, and so all the people in their lives can reflect on, now what did I learn about that experience?
And Gump stays well, and Gump as a character, he does grow, but he doesn't grow exponentially. He grows in little increments. And he matures, and so that's
which is antithetical to what many dramatists would tell you should happen, which is interesting for a big studio movie. Okay, next movie. Oh,
the fun anecdote. I'll give that fun footnote. John Waters has on record saying he feels that movie is evil, which I always find hilarious. John Waters.
A Troll in Central Park. Do we have anything to say about that? July 13th.
Nope.
Okay. Nope. Moving along.
July 15th. This was a big day. Angels in the Outfield, first of all.
Are you aware? Have you seen the cast list of that movie? Like the actual.
Yeah, it's a good cast, isn't it?
It's one of those like, wow, they're all in that movie. Like, if only the movie had been good.
We go through the cast. Danny Glover, Brenda Fricker, because if you're going to do a baseball movie, you can't do it without Brenda Fricker. Tony Danza, Christopher Lloyd, Ben Johnson, Jay Sanders, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Adrian Brody, Matthew McConaughey, Dermot Mulroney, all the young upstarts. Are in with a lot of the a lot of the older generation in this movie.
Yeah, and like I said, if it had been a good movie, it'd be one of those, wow, like can't believe they were all in that one movie. But it's a bad movie, and so we're kind of stuck saying, wow, I can't believe they were all in that bad movie.
Anyway, also on that day, David O. Russell made a splash when his Spanking the Monkey was released in theaters.
Very good movie. Very dark comedy about incest, but very funny.
Love the way you describe it.
I know. It's so unusual for a summer movie, isn't it?
Yeah. I've always been a fan of that movie. It's very creepy but funny and uncomfortable. Very Sundance mid-90s type of one of those uncomfortable dark comedies.
Yeah.
I remember the thing at Sundance. It actually beat out the big controversy. It beat out Clerks for the audience award. So there you go.
Yeah, and for a movie about incest, mother-son incest, that's to win an audience award.
Yeah.
But Jeremy Davies, he doesn't do enough. He is always such a I think we thought maybe he'd have the career that somebody like Joaquin Phoenix has now. Because he's that kind of off kilter presence.
He's creepy in that movie, Spanking a Monkey, Of course, his big moment was Saving Private Ryan. He should have been nominated for that for supporting actor. Didn't get it. But yeah, and then of course Charlie Manson.
It's a great Manson. God. Anyway, also on that date, we had a big movie, True Lies. A very clean, entertaining movie.
It's one of those movies with I love the opening section, and I love the the final set piece, but in the middle there's a long section that has not aged well. I saw that movie a few years ago, rewatched it. It is kind of startling, the hostility towards women that courses through that movie. So yeah, I know it's his divorce movie, so probably the source of that, but still, it's pretty. It's funny. A lot of people like to say that Michael Bay was kind of the illegitimate son of like Tony Scott, and I don't think so. You look at True Lies. There's a lot of Bay in that. Like I'm sure Michael Bay studied at True Lies. There's a lot of that in there.
Mhm.
Obviously, Cameron is a world-class filmmaker compared to Michael Bay, and like I said, there are some great stuff in True Lies. There was a great return to form for Schwarzenegger after Last Action Hero, but that whole midsection involving tricking his wife and because he thinks he's cheating on her and setting her up, that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So.
Well, it's a movie that begs the question. Remember when Tom Arnold was a thing?
Yeah.
But I did like the set pieces. I like the chase through the Weston Bonaventure.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff.
Culminating in the rooftop. I think in terms of his action, it kind of shines the grandiosity of it. And he's trying to play that within a smaller domestic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, I thought it worked pretty well. But that's not taking into account any political. I know there's been a lot of revisionism about that movie as well, like you expressed with its treatment of women, but also the Arabs, Arab actors.
I'm not that. I don't really bother with the Arabs. I know there has been talk about how he portrayed the Arab terrorists in that movie, but it's done so comically over the top that I don't think that part is not meant to be taken seriously. So I don't see it as that offensive, just because they're played as basically comically dumb terrorists.
So you don't see that ultimately Jamie Lee Curtis becomes an empowered character.
I mean, yes, that is kind of the saving grace, but I mean, her big action set piece is a girl-on-girl catfight in the back of a limousine. Like, I mean, they're like two girls on the way to a concert. And
her big set piece is stripping for her husband. Right,
and so yeah, and so I mean, those images are just they have not aged well. I don't think. Like I said, the big cat fight between the two girls has not aged well. Like I said, just the whole tone of the film, the dialogue towards women. Tom Arnold's very, very funny, but his whole character is hostile toward his ex-wife. He's constantly, bemoaning his ex-wife and how, evil women are. It just has this tone. Charlton Heston is, has a dismissive tone towards women's subordinates. So it's just kind of almost unconsciously sexist throughout the film.
Yeah. It's been so long since I've seen it, I don't remember.
This is coming from a director who built his career on female leading characters.
Yeah,
in movies that normally didn't accommodate them.
Right. No, it's true. It's an anomaly of a film. I do believe, he's literally in the middle of a divorce. So I look at it as he is working out a lot of anger in that film.
And he was on his way to another one in a couple of years after that. So.
Yeah. Okay. The Client came out July 20th. The John Grisham kick continued. The Joel Schumacher film.
This kicks off
Susan Sarandon, Tommy Lee Jones, and Brad Renfro.
Anthony Edwards and Anthony LaPaglia. This kicks off Joel Schumacher's 4-summer run of $100 million movies. Client, and it's one of those. This is really. I mean, it's a John Grisham thriller, but this is almost like a legal thriller for kids. Is really what this is. It is a legal thriller for kids. Renfro is actually quite good in the film. Sarandon got an Oscar nomination. I think it was her third of the decade. She would win the following year with Dead Man Walking finally. But, it's not as good as The Firm, which was the previous summer, or The Rainmaker a couple of years later, So it's one of those, for about 5 years there, every Grisham book was being adapted and was being a hit.
Yeah.
This was one of those. So it had nothing to do with quality at this point. I mean, Schumacher's a good enough director that he keeps it moving at a clip, and it's watchable and entertaining on its own merits, but it's not memorable.
Okay. I remember it vaguely. I mean, I remember watching it, but thinking that it was, befitting of a supermarket paperback kind of feel to it. July 22nd. Anybody see Lassie?
See which one?
Lassie.
Lassie? Actually, I have. It's pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
As these stories go, I mean, given what you give them you give them the premise, like, we want to do Lassie the movie modern day, and that's your assignment. And so, like, okay, well, I want to make it good, considering that assignment. They did a good job. So, yeah, Lassie's actually a good movie.
Also on that date, this is the movie that Roger Ebert hated. And that's Rob Reiner's North.
Yeah.
This is kind of like, no, I guess it's not. I was going to say it's like Forrest Gump without the mental impairment, but maybe it's not. Go ahead.
There are a couple of segments I remember I did chuckle at when supposed to. The Eskimo segment is funny. I remember that cracked me up. And a couple of lines Alan Arkin had as the judge made me laugh. But yeah, it's not a good film. It's Rob Reiner coming off of A Few Good Men, so it's a real fall from grace. But he'll rebound a year later with American President. So, it's from Alan Zweibel, the writer, who came to notoriety years earlier with the film Where's Papa?
Yep.
So
a great movie, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, the following week, Whit Stillman came out with Barcelona. Was this his debut movie?
No, second film, Metropolitan. Is his first film.
Right.
This is Barcelona. Terrific movie. Yeah, great script. Chris Eichman is wonderful in the movie. First time saw Mira Sorvino in the movie. She's quite good. Yeah. That trilogy with Stillman movies, Barcelona, Metropolitan, Last Days of Disco, I'm a big fan of those movies. So this is good stuff.
I find it interesting that Barcelona grossed more than Black Beauty, which was the next movie, and it was a major studio release, so I guess that speaks to what he was able to do back then.
Yeah. Also on that date, It Could Happen to You. Isn't that the Nicolas Cage lottery Bridget Fonda movie?
Yeah.
Terrific movie. Terrific.
That
rom-com.
Is very good. Yeah.
Terrific rom-com. They should have kept the original title. Cop gives waitress $2 million tip. Better title. But yeah, this was Nicolas Cage was on his run here of becoming a star. He had done Guarding Tess and Red Rock West earlier in the year. Now It Could Happen to You was his summer movie. He'd have a flop in the Christmas time with Trapped in Paradise, also with John Lovitz and Dana Carvey, both being very annoying. But then the following year would be Kiss of Death and Leaving Las Vegas. But It Could Happen to You he's great. He's a great romantic lead. Bridget Fonda is very charming. Rosie Perez steals the movie.
Mm-hmm. That is a very
Finally,
good movie.
on that date, the comedic behemoth that year, really, was The Mask, Jim Carrey, $351 million grosser. And Jim Carrey officially, became even more of a phenomenon. Yeah.
Yep. It's a live-action cartoon, basically. It's a live-action cartoon. It's the...
Which you could say the same thing about Jim Carrey at that period of time.
Right. But the actual film itself has cartoon elements. He was inspired by Tex Avery. And I would say it's probably the only film that's a knockoff of Beetlejuice that works. And the thing about The Mask, it just has a lot of gags, a lot of stuff in it. Jim Carrey's obviously going through the whole movie, but the stuff with the dog is classic comic stuff. And of course, amazingly, the other breakthrough of The Mask was Cameron Diaz. And she was actually able to make an impression alongside Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Mask is fun. It's fun.
I never liked it. I mean, I found it so grating. But
did you like Ace Ventura or Dumb and Dumber?
I love Dumb and Dumber. Yeah.
And the first Ace Ventura?
I was okay with it. It wasn't really my. Yeah, it was fine. So out of those three, I would say The Mask is probably my least favorite.
Did you notice Cameron Diaz, or did you not think she made an impression?
No, I noticed her. She made an impression on me.
Right.
Well, I have to admit, I like The Mask better than Ace Ventura 1 or 2, and about as much as I like Dumb and Dumber. So for whatever.
And I like Chuck Russell. At the time, he did this. He did Elm Street 3. The
Blob remake.
The Blob remake. That's fun. 2 years later, he would do Eraser, which is the last great Schwarzenegger action movie. So like I said, it had a lot of fun. It's a lot better than Son of the Mask.
Oh yeah.
August 1st, Deadbeat. Anybody know Deadbeat?
Nope.
I
don't think so.
Anything about that
one. That's not Dead Bang, which is a Don Johnson movie from years earlier.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
August 3rd, the third Jack Ryan movie in the... Yeah, it is the third, isn't it?
Yeah.
Clear and Present Danger?
Mm-hmm.
Second Harrison Ford one.
Second Harrison Ford, yeah.
I prefer
solid Philip Noyce movie, right?
Yeah. I prefer it to Patriot Games. Red October is better than both. But I just rewatched it. It's still pretty good. Clear and Present Danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember there being there's a real funny suspense sequence about finding copying paper for the printer. I remember that was a key sequence.
Well, that sounds exciting.
That's a very mid-90s set piece. Like, we need paper for the copier.
Also on that date, Ang Lee's Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, or as Billy Crystal said in his Oscar monologue that year, it's how Arnold Schwarzenegger asked Maria Shriver out on their first date.
That was a good line.
That was a great one. Yeah.
Remember when Ang Lee made like intimate, human-sized comedy dramas that we all were kind of amazing, that we all were just kind of quietly blown away by? Hopefully he'll get back to that one day. So yeah, remade about 7 years later as Tortilla Soup. I don't know if you all know that one. With a Mexican family.
I remember the movie. I didn't see it, but I do remember that being a remake, yeah.
Good film, too.
Airheads, Brendan Fraser, August 5th.
Ooh, an HBO staple.
Yeah,
Truly,
it is.
An HBO staple. I don't know how many times I watched this on HBO. Yeah. And this
Michael
was
Lehman, man.
Michael Lehman, yeah. His Hudson Hawk rebound, because when you rebound from Hudson Hawk, you do airheads. I guess it's a real footnote in history. This was the first, I think, major cinematic appearance of Adam Sandler in a supporting role.
Yeah, I think so.
So Sandler and Buscemi. So there you go. Good soundtrack, good metal soundtrack. Has a few funny lines in it, a few funny gags, but yeah, it's an HBO Saturday afternoon movie.
Also on that day, Penelope Spheris does a cinematic version of The Little Rascals.
Yep.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah.
Spheris.
Talking about the decline of Western civilization.
Yep. And this was her follow-up to Wayne's World. Is that correct? Yep. I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and she wasn't invited on for Wayne's World 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, she did Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, that's true. That was the follow-up. Yeah, that was the next movie. You're right.
Which was a hit. Surprise
hit.
Was. So I guess they said, well, can you do that for the Little Rascals?
Yeah, I just thought that was a bad idea when it came out. And, again, that's another one I skipped, I have to admit. So.
It was better than Camp Nowhere, I'll say that much.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, I can.
You're blowing our lead, man. We haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
August 10th. This was a little under the radar surprise for a lot of people. The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Or is that what it is?
Yep.
Adventures of Priscilla.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Terrence Stamp's comeback in a young, well, not young, but relatively young, but a pre-LA Confidential Guy Pearce.
Yeah, that is true.
It's a fun movie. I like that movie a lot. It's really fun. Terrence Stamp is really good in it. Guy Pearce is good. It's just it's really good. You know, Drag was in for a couple of years. It's better than that. Remember the following year was Tu Wong Fu.
Yeah. Yes.
Which had its moments, but Priscilla's the real deal.
Yeah.
The following
excellent
week,
choice of music too. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
What was their choice of music?
Well, they just had a lot of songs at that time that kind of been forgotten.
ABBA. I think they used some ABBA on that too. Also, that was like
they did. They used. I remember them using "Billy, Don't Be a Hero" and "I've Never Been to Me" by Charlene, and some just really things that you wouldn't. "Go West" by the Village People, which is one you don't think of when you. So it was just an interesting choice of pop song.
That was the kickoff of the. Rediscovering of ABBA. Muriel's Wedding would come a year later. And so ABBA would get that second wind into work.
Yeah.
Okay. August 12th, Corinna. Begging audiences to see Ray Liotta as a sweet, gentle man after Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's quite good in the role. It's just a very weird movie. It's a kids film, but it's really not for kids because it's about death, and it's very sad, and it has this very, very tentative interracial romance between Ray Liotta and Whoopi Goldberg. There's he's a jingle writer.
He hires her to be his nanny after the death of his wife.
Right, and he's a jingle writer, and there's a scene where she helps him write a jingle for pudding, and so it's just kind of it's a weird movie.
Yeah, and wasn't it was the final film for Don Amici, I believe.
Was it?
Yeah, I think it was. I think he died before it came out. I think he was already.
Who directed that? Who directed that?
Oh God.
Corinna is directed by Jesse Nelson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who is best known for probably I Am Sam.
That's
really?
Right, yeah.
Well, Corinna is better than I Am Sam. I will say that definitively.
Okay. Also on that date, in the Army now, Pauly Shore.
Ooh. See, you need a movie like In the Army Now to demonstrate why Airhead is a watchable HBO Saturday afternoon movie, while In the Army Now is an unwatchable HBO Saturday afternoon movie. So there's a difference between those two.
I'll agree with that. Yeah.
Also on that date, the next Karate Kid. And the next Karate Kid was Hilary Swank, right?
So yes, so that is the historical footnote that the next Karate Kid starred a future 2-time Oscar winner. 5 years later, she'd be an Oscar winner. So,
yep. So. Yeah, and Pat Morita returned. We will
to be the teacher. I did not see it. I've yet to see it. I've seen 1, 2, and 3. I have not. I drew the line at this one.
Yeah,
I don't even know if I remember. I don't even know if I remember 3. But I'm telling you, I just rewatched part 1 and 2 just a few weeks ago.
1 still holds up quite well.
Yeah, 2 not as much, but it has its moments, and 3 well.
2 has. I do like the final fight of 2. I think it's the best fight.
I agree. Yeah. And,
George Miller had a movie out the following week called Andre, the true story of a little girl who befriends a seal.
Wait, did he produce that or did he direct that?
He directed it. So
we're talking Mad Max George Miller, right? That's the same George Miller?
It is not the same George Miller.
Oh, okay, that explains a lot.
Okay.
It's a George Miller who also did Zeus and Roxanne, The Neverending Story 2, The Man from Snowy River. Okay.
So it's an imposter.
Man. Yeah.
Okay.
I had no recollection of George Miller doing that movie. Okay. August 19th, this is the movie we've been waiting to discuss, Blank Man.
I actually do think it's funny. I think it's funny. It works. You have a concept, you have to execute it. Does it deliver? Yeah. Damon Wayans wants to make a goofy African American superhero comedy, kind of like an tradition of like a Jerry Lewis comedy. There are some gags in that movie that are laugh out loud funny. So yeah, Blank Man, better than Meteor Man.
Also on that date, here's a movie that got a lot of scorn and ridicule: Color of Night, the erotic Bruce Willis thriller.
Good God. Yeah, Bruce Willis was in Free Fall around this. Remember, this is Striking Distance and Billy Bathgate and North and Color of Night. I'm sure there's something else. There's some other stuff in there. So yeah.
Hudson Hawk, right?
Hudson Hawk's 91.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's all this bad stuff. He's just in Free Fall before Pulp Fiction. And Color of Night, is going to be his Basic Instinct, and as Richard Rush, his first film since The Stuntman.
Yep.
We're all excited, and we go see it, and it's awful, and it has a twist that even the slowest person in the audience can figure out a mile away.
Yeah. I rewatched parts of it recently. It's just a bad movie, and you have to tolerate. And it's not even. It doesn't quite get up to the caliber of so bad it's good, because it's just so exhausting to sit and have to watch all of these crazies in these therapy sessions with the therapist Bruce Willis, going through their stories and their little crazy tics and everything one after another. It's a lot to kind of endure, but it wants so badly to be a scorching erotic thriller, but it's far too silly to maintain that. Fresh, also on that date.
Also made my top 10 that year. Boaz Yakin. Sean Nelson gives one of the great child performances in film history. Giancarlo Esposito is one of the great villains. Yeah, fresh, amazing movie.
Yeah, I remember Roger Ebert touting its, singing its praises, I should say. He was a big fan of that as well. And I remember thinking it was, I enjoyed it. I haven't seen it since it came out back then, but I probably should revisit it. But yeah, I remember it being pretty well done.
Okay, guys, we're almost done. Just a couple more hours, and we'll be out of here. August 26th, Camp Nowhere.
It went nowhere.
Okay. God, there are so many disposable movies.
Yeah. I think I know where you're going with the next one, and there's an interesting tie-in to everything.
Well, the next one is It's Pat.
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
Sure.
That is uncredited, the uncredited screenplay contribution by Quentin Tarantino. So you were talking about the summer of or the year of Tarantino. That's another one. Although I'm sure he's not proud to admit that. But
no, he has a very close relationship, or at least he did at that time, with Julia Sweeney.
He did, yes.
Yeah,
I think they dated.
He was involved with her. God Said Ha too.
Yeah. I think it's Pat is always the whipping post of the the nadir of the Saturday Night Live films. I'm going to be honest and tell you, I laughed quite a few times at the movie. Is it great? No, it's not a great movie, but there are some solid laughs in it, and it's breezy, short enough. It's just a little over an hour and 15 minutes, and I don't know. I watched it again not too long ago, and there are some funny moments in it. I don't know what that says about me, but
it's not the worst of the SNL movies.
No,
far worse
not at all.
SNL movies, like look at Coneheads or Ladies' Man. There you go.
Oh yeah, exactly. Or Superstar is pretty bad too, I think, from what I remember.
Also on that date, Police Academy 7, Mission to Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
7. Jesus.
Yeah.
They were going for the James Bond numbers there. They're like, this could be a franchise that lives for decades.
7 and 10 years. 7 and 10 years.
But the big story of that date was Natural Born Killers.
Oh yeah.
One of the more controversial films of that year. It still remains controversial. I probably no movie have I switched opinions on to a more profound degree than Natural Born Killers. I think I was prone to love everything that Oliver Stone did at that time, and in general, I did. And when you first watch Natural Born Killers, it's such an overwhelming experience that you're kind of floored by it. And while I think it's one of those movies that I might admire more than I enjoy. Because I know what it's trying to do, but there's so many elements of it that doesn't make it rewatchable for me. The mania of it, I got it the first time. I don't need to put myself through that again. It has some great performances. I mean, without a doubt, it's got monstrous performances in it. The Robert Richardson photography is just incredible. This pastiche of it's nightmare fuel, and every media controversy. I remember it was being edited right up to the last weeks before release, because they inserted the OJ footage from the OJ hearing, the preliminary hearing, in the movie. They had a shot of that. But I get tired of the Oliver Stone Indian stuff and all this bullshit, and
I think it's a work of art. I saw it twice in theaters. I saw it my first time. I saw it at a promo radio rock station promo screening, and everyone just went wild. It was funny. It was fun to watch because I was sitting behind the row where the official critics sat. So all the civilians went wild for it. All the young people just went nuts for it. The critics were just stone-faced. They had just been assaulted. They didn't know what to make of it. They didn't know what to make of it.
The movie's meant to be an assaultative experience. and maybe that's what I don't like when I rewatch it now. It's because they're unpleasant movies that I enjoy watching. I mean, I enjoy Texas Chainsaw. I enjoy, but I don't enjoy rewatching Natural Born Killers. It's just totally an unpleasant experience for me. There's no exhilaration in it for me.
The second half is pure exhilarating filmmaking in the prison. Everything Robert Downey Jr. does, I get a kick out of. The big riot sequence is just, I mean, it's an obscene word, but that whole stretch of the riot and all that stuff is just fun to watch. It's just crazy, berserk filmmaking. I just love watching it. It is the movie of our time. It is a movie of its time. The fact that it was nominated for cinematography and editing is a shame, is a crime. I don't think there was a better edited movie that year or maybe that decade. So yeah.
See, I get exactly what it's trying to do. Like, I understand that, and I admire the hell out of it for it. And I know that it can't work without that chaotic approach. But so I know that the movie works at what it's trying to do, and yet I just fundamentally don't like it. And it's not any kind of moral thing. It's just not pleasant for me to view. And I don't find Mickey and Mallory the iconic couple that all of a sudden wants them to be. I think Sailor and Lula are that iconic couple, and he wants them to be that. I think first of all, I mean, it's one of those films, you either get on its wavelength or you don't. And if you don't, then the movie's going to feel like a stunt and be distancing. I think what puts off a lot of people is not the violence so much, is that Mickey and Mallory are unironic in love for each other. And I think that's what disturbs a lot of people. A lot of times in these kind of Outlaws on the Run, the love story, there's always kind of an ironic distancing that goes on, be it Badlands, Bonnie and Clyde, and so forth. And so you're not fully in it. There's always like a little distance. Yeah. And in that's another thing I don't like. That's another thing I don't like about it. Because when you hear Oliver Stone talk about it, he talks about how the movie's really about love and how love is the only thing that saves Mickey and Mallory, and he makes it this flowery kind of story about purity. And I think that's another disingenuous thing said by a director with his head up his ass.
But the thing is, I mean, there's what a director intends, and then there's, once the movie is out, then there's what the movie is. So Oliver Stone can intend it to be this and says this is what I was going for. That's fine. But once the movie is out, the movie is its own thing. And what the movie really is this thing of these two people who are in love unironically, who go on this killing spree. And what it is just how it's this chicken and egg relationship between mass media and violence, and what one fuels the other, and who came first, what came first, and how it's just become this symbiotic relationship. And that is,
it's also interesting to consider. This is another one of those pieces of filmmaking. I can't think of any other examples right now. But can you criticizing something while being that exact same thing you're criticizing?
Well, Clockwork Orange is a good example of that. I mean, Clockwork Orange.
So the Clockwork Orange goes the opposite way. Clockwork Orange somehow says that the intentions of the state are the real evil. That you cannot save someone from their true selves, and you should not try.
But the thing about Clockwork Orange, it wants to be, it wants to rail against ultra-violence and violent nature of people, while at the same time, the first hour of that movie, it is totally on the side of Alex the Droog. It's on his side. So it has it both ways. And Kubrick does that purposely. He wants you to be on Alex's side, but then also not to be. And so he goes back and forth on that. And so there's films like Fight Club is like that. Fight Club is not as good as Natural Born Killers, but is Fight Club an attack on fascist thinking, or is it just another example of fascist thinking?
I just don't know that the whole approach of am I really, why am I attracted to this violence and degradation that's played out in the media? I don't know if that comes across in the movie when it feels like Oliver Stone is so giddy, swimming in that violence himself.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the great joke of the film, is that, yes, he is railing against the violence and degradation that the media gives us by the handful, but then is also, he's railing against that, but is also saying, look, I am also a product of that. And, the 20th century has created me and has created this environment. And that's why we get these images of the 20th century throughout the film, be it from Scarface to atomic bombs. He's like, look, we are a product of all of this, so I am of it, and I'm also outside of it. So yeah, it's the
and
chicken and egg.
If he includes Scarface, he's also an arbitrator of it. He's a
So he he doesn't let himself off the hook either.
Adam, you have anything to say about it?
Did you like the movie?
I'm still a fan of it. I actually think my appreciation of it has increased since its release. When I saw it in a theater, I liked it, but there are a lot of things that I've embraced about it that in the intervening years since that I don't think I had enough life experience to pick up on, and or movie experience maybe, and I think my appreciation has just increased over the years, and I am a fan of it. It's probably not my favorite Oliver Stone movie, but I do appreciate it.
August 31st, Killing Zoe.
Right, the Roger Avey bank heist movie.
Pretty good movie too, I think.
And finally, Milk Money. We go out on a high note.
My favorite story of Milk Money is, I remember this was years later, I read a thing where Ed Harris was on a red carpet line, and greeting the fans and signing autographs, and someone had a Milk Money VHS tape, and he signed it. So I always found that kind of amusing. Like, yeah, I'll sign Milk Money. He's like, I'm proud of that.
That's funny.
Well, he did it. Be rude of him not to sign it. So I rewatched this a couple of months ago. Believe it
weird,
or not.
Isn't it?
It is strange. Is that a Disney movie?
No.
I don't think so.
Paramount, I believe.
It wants to be a Disney movie. But, Disney draws the line at hookers, unless it's Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
A Pretty Woman, yeah. And it feels like the movie kind of may be taking its cue from that. But it's just you're right, it is an odd story. But falling in love with a hooker, and the hooker befriends the kid, and the kid learns all about sex from the hooker, and it's played out in this very wholesome Leave It to Beaver way.
It's like they save up their money because they don't even say. I don't think they say to him they want to see a naked woman, and they're like, "We have our money here," and but they never even ask her what they want her to do. The movie's very coy.
All right. Well, a few good movies, and more than a few not great movies.
Always something to watch every week.